The year was 1821, a time when the United States was still in its infancy, grappling with the growing pains of a young nation. The echoes of the Revolutionary War were still fresh in the minds of many, and the country was on the cusp of significant change. In the heart of Edgefield District, South Carolina, a region known for its rich soil and even richer history, a son was born to James and Mary Ann Dent Longstreet. This child, who would grow up to be a significant figure in American history, entered a world that was both beautiful and brutal. They named him James, destined to inherit not just his father's name, but also the mantle of a complex and tumultuous legacy. The Longstreet family was well respected in the community, known for their strong values and deep ties to the land. Edgefield was a place steeped in contradictions, known for its fertile land and equally renowned for its fiery tempers. The region was a microcosm of the larger Southern society, where wealth and poverty, freedom and slavery, coexisted in a delicate and often volatile balance. It was a land where cotton was king, and honor a sacred code. The economy of Edgefield, like much of the South, was built on the back of the cotton industry, which in turn relied heavily on the institution of slavery. Young James grew up amidst the sprawling cotton fields where the labor of enslaved people was a daily reality. He would have seen the harsh conditions they endured and the immense wealth their labor generated for plantation owners, the rhythmic hum of cicadas, a sound that became synonymous with the long, hot southern summers. These sounds, along with the sights and smells of the countryside, would have been a constant backdrop to his childhood, and the ever-present tension between North and South. This tension was not just a distant political issue, but a palpable force in daily life, influencing conversations, decisions, and the very fabric of society. He was a witness to the institution of slavery, seeing firsthand the human cost of the economic system that sustained his community. The sight of enslaved people toiling in the fields, their lives controlled by others, was a stark and sobering reality, a system deeply woven into the fabric of Southern society. Slavery was not just an economic institution, but a social one, shaping relationships, power dynamics, and cultural norms. These early experiences would leave an indelible mark on his character, shaping his worldview and influencing the choices he would make in the years to come. The complexities of his upbringing, surrounded by both privilege and oppression, would inform his actions and decisions as he grew older. But Edgefield also instilled in him a deep sense of Southern pride, a pride rooted in the land, the people, and the traditions of the South. This pride was intertwined with a belief in the Southern way of life and the values that defined it, and a belief in the inherent rights of states. The idea that states should have the power to govern themselves without interference from the federal government was a core tenet of Southern political thought, and one that James would come to embrace. The seeds of his future allegiance were sown in the fertile ground of his youth. The values and beliefs he absorbed during his formative years would guide him throughout his life, influencing his decisions and actions in profound ways. Little did anyone know that this son of Edgefield would rise to become one of the most prominent and controversial figures in American military history. His journey from the fields of South Carolina to the battlefields of the Civil War would be marked by both triumph and tragedy, figures in American military history. His legacy, shaped by the complexities of his upbringing and the turbulent times in which he lived, would leave an indelible mark on the nation. The Longstreet family history was deeply intertwined with the story of the South itself. Their lineage could be traced back to the early settlers who first tilled the fertile lands of the southern states. Over the centuries, the Longstreets became emblematic of the Southern aristocracy, their name synonymous with both the grandeur and the complexities of the region's history. Their roots ran deep in the cotton fields where the soil was rich and the labor was grueling. The cotton fields were not just a source of income but a way of life, shaping the rhythms of their days and the seasons of their years. Their fortunes rising and falling with the price of the white gold that fueled the Southern economy. Cotton was more than a crop, it was the lifeblood of the Southern states, dictating the ebb and flow of their prosperity. The Longstreets, like many of their peers, were at the mercy of market fluctuations, their wealth tied to the whims of global demand. Generations of Longstreets had toiled under the southern sun, building lives and legacies on the backs of enslaved Africans. The labor of these enslaved individuals was the foundation upon which the Longstreets' wealth was built, a stark reminder of the human cost of their prosperity. The fields echoed with the songs and sorrows of those who worked them, their stories interwoven with the land itself. It was a system that brought them prosperity but also carried the heavy weight of moral ambiguity. The Longstreets, like many plantation owners, grappled with the ethical implications of their way of life. The grandeur of their homes and the opulence of their lifestyles were inextricably linked to the suffering of others, a dichotomy that haunted their legacy. James Longstreet Sr., a man of strong will and even stronger convictions, had inherited this complex legacy. He was a product of his time, shaped by the values and beliefs of the Southern gentry. Yet he was also a man of vision, aware of the changing tides and the need for adaptation in a rapidly evolving world. He dreamed of a different life for his son, a life beyond the cotton fields. James Sr. envisioned a future where his son could rise above the limitations of their agrarian roots, aspiring to roles of greater influence and respectability. He saw potential in young James, a spark that could ignite a new path for the Longstreet name. He envisioned young James as a lawyer, a man of influence who could navigate the treacherous waters of Southern politics. The law was seen as a noble profession, one that could offer stability and prestige. James Sr. believed that with the right education and guidance, his son could become a pillar of the community, advocating for justice and progress. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Life in the South was unpredictable, and the best-laid plans often went awry. The region was on the brink of monumental changes, with tensions simmering beneath the surface. The Longstreets, like many families, would find their destinies shaped by forces beyond their control. The cotton gin, invented just a few decades before James's birth, had cast a long shadow over the South. This revolutionary device had transformed the cotton industry, making it more profitable than ever before. However, it also entrenched the institution of slavery, as the demand for labor to pick the increased cotton output grew exponentially. While it had revolutionized cotton production and brought immense wealth to plantation owners, it had also solidified the institution of slavery and deepened the divide between North and South. The economic boom came at a great human cost, and the societal rifts it created would eventually lead to conflict and upheaval. The Longstreets stood at the crossroads of this turbulent era, their legacy forever intertwined with the history of the South. The cotton gin, a marvel of engineering, had become a double-edged sword for the South. Invented by Eli Whitney in 1793, this machine revolutionized the cotton industry by making it easier and faster to separate cotton fibers from their seeds. This innovation drastically reduced the labor required to process cotton, making it a highly profitable crop. However, the gin's impact was far-reaching and complex, influencing not just the economy but also the social fabric of the South. On one hand, it had transformed the region into an economic powerhouse, supplying the world with cotton and fueling the Industrial Revolution. The South became the world's leading cotton producer, and its economy boomed. Cotton was dubbed King Cotton because of its immense economic importance. The wealth generated from cotton exports led to the construction of grand plantations and the rise of a wealthy planter class. This newfound prosperity, however, came at a significant human cost. Plantations flourished, and the demand for enslaved labor skyrocketed. The cotton gin made cotton farming more profitable, which in turn increased the demand for land and labor. Enslaved Africans were forced to work long hours in grueling conditions to meet the growing demand for cotton. The brutal reality of slavery became even more entrenched, as the South's economy became increasingly dependent on this system of forced labor. The South's dependence on slavery became more entrenched than ever before. The wealth and power of the planter class were built on the backs of enslaved people, creating a society deeply divided along racial lines. The institution of slavery was defended with increasing fervor by those who benefited from it, leading to a rigid social hierarchy that placed white planters at the top and enslaved Africans at the bottom. On the other hand, the gin had exacerbated the moral dilemma at the heart of the Southern way of life. The stark contrast between the economic benefits of cotton and the human suffering it caused led to a growing sense of unease among some Southerners. The moral conflict over slavery became a central issue, with debates raging over the ethics of enslaving fellow human beings for economic gain. Abolitionist voices grew louder in the North, condemning the South's peculiar institution as a barbaric relic of the past. Abolitionists argued that slavery was morally wrong and incompatible with the principles of freedom and equality upon which the United States was founded. Their efforts to end slavery included organizing rallies, publishing pamphlets, and lobbying for legislative change. The abolitionist movement gained momentum, increasing tensions between the North and the South. The chasm between the two regions widened, setting the stage for the political and social upheavals that would culminate in the Civil War. The debate over slavery became a defining issue in American politics, with each side becoming more entrenched in its position. The North, driven by industrialization and a growing abolitionist sentiment, clashed with the agrarian, slave-dependent South. This growing divide would eventually lead to secession and the outbreak of war. James Longstreet grew up amidst this tumultuous backdrop. Born in South Carolina and raised in Georgia, Longstreet was deeply influenced by the culture and values of the antebellum South. His formative years were spent in a society grappling with the contradictions of prosperity built on human suffering. The debates over slavery and states' rights were not just abstract political issues but were woven into the fabric of everyday life. The debates over slavery and states' rights raged around him, shaping his worldview and influencing the path he would choose. Longstreet's family, like many others in the South, held strong opinions on these issues. The concept of states' rights, the idea that individual states should have the authority to govern themselves without federal interference, was a particularly powerful influence. This belief in states' rights was closely tied to the defense of slavery, as Southern states sought to maintain their autonomy in the face of growing Northern opposition. His father, a staunch believer in states' rights, instilled in him a deep skepticism of federal authority. This skepticism was a common sentiment in the South, where many viewed the federal government as a distant and potentially oppressive force. Longstreet's upbringing in this environment of distrust towards federal power and strong support for states' rights would play a crucial role in his later decisions. These early influences would later play a pivotal role in Longstreet's decision to join the Confederacy. When the Civil War broke out, Longstreet, like many Southern men of his generation, felt a strong sense of loyalty to his home state and its way of life. His decision to fight for the Confederacy was shaped by the values and beliefs he had absorbed during his youth, setting the stage for his future as one of the most prominent generals in the Confederate Army. James Longstreet Sr. had always envisioned a different path for his son. He saw in young James a sharp mind and a quiet determination that reminded him of himself. He dreamed of sending his son north, to the prestigious academies of the North, where he could receive a first-class education and escape the limitations of Southern society. Law, he believed, was the key to influence and power. A skilled lawyer could navigate the complexities of the legal system, defend the rights of his fellow Southerners, and perhaps even rise to a position of political prominence. He shared his aspirations with his son, instilling in him a thirst for knowledge and a desire to make his mark on the world. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. When James was just 9 years old, his father passed away, leaving a void in his life and casting a shadow over his future. The dream of a legal career seemed to vanish with his father, replaced by the harsh realities of life in the antebellum South.